The ancient words echo once more, not from a sacred scroll, but from the very heart of power. There is a time for peace, and a time for war. These profound verses from Ecclesiastes, steeped in millennia of human experience, are now invoked to justify a conflict of devastating proportions, a war that tears at the fabric of a nation and reverberates across the globe. How did a secular leader come to wield such potent, religiously charged language, and what does it reveal about the forces shaping Israel's destiny? The image of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, once synonymous with unwavering strength and national security, now stands fractured amidst the ruins of Gaza and the anguish of a nation. Over 10,000 lives have been extinguished, a staggering toll that paints a grim picture of the conflict's human cost. Gaza, a densely populated strip of land, lies in ruins, its infrastructure decimated, its people displaced. At home, the political ground beneath Netanyahu's feet is crumbling, his approval ratings plummeting to historic lows. The very foundation of his political identity, the protector of Israel, has been profoundly shaken. Former leaders, once his allies or rivals, now speak with a unified voice of condemnation. Ehud Olmert, a former prime minister, articulates the sentiment of many: he is in a state of collapse. A man who built his image on strength has delivered only weakness. This isn't merely political critique, it's a profound questioning of leadership in a moment of existential crisis. The events of October 7th, a day that will forever be etched into Israel's collective memory, exposed vulnerabilities that many believed impossible, shattering the illusion of impenetrable security. To truly grasp the complex tapestry of Benjamin Netanyahu's leadership and the current crisis, one must journey back decades, to a seemingly innocuous meeting in New York City. In the early 1980s, a young, ambitious Netanyahu, then Israel's deputy chief of mission to the United States, sought an audience with Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the revered leader of the Chabad-Lubavitch movement. This encounter, far from a mere diplomatic courtesy, would plant a seed of destiny in Netanyahu's mind, a seed that would seemingly blossom into a guiding narrative for his political career. From his modest headquarters in Brooklyn, the Rebbe, as he was universally known, presided over one of Judaism's most dynamic and influential movements. Chabad-Lubavitch, with its roots in 18th-century Hasidism, had transformed into a global network of spiritual revival, educational outreach, and, significantly, political influence. Its emissaries, known as shlushim, spread across the world, reconnecting Jews with their heritage, often in places where Jewish life had long been dormant. But beyond its remarkable organizational prowess, Chabad harbored a unique and potent Messianic belief. To millions of his devoted followers, the Rebbe was not merely a spiritual leader, he was the Mashiach, the Messiah. Even after his passing in 1994, a significant segment of Chabad Hasidim continues to believe he will physically return to complete his divine mission of ushering in the Messianic era. This belief, while controversial within broader Judaism, forms a crucial backdrop to the Rebbe's interaction with Netanyahu. It was during one of these meetings that the Rebbe delivered a personal prophecy to the young diplomat: "One day, you will lead Israel. And you will be the last leader before the Messiah comes." Imagine the weight of such words on a budding politician. Was it a blessing, a prediction, or a divine mandate? For Netanyahu, a secular Jew by upbringing and lifestyle, this prophecy from a revered spiritual figure must have resonated deeply, perhaps even shaping his self-perception and ambition. The Rebbe's words lingered. As Netanyahu embarked on his political journey, rising through the ranks of the Likud party, he consistently paid his respects to the Rebbe, cultivating a relationship that transcended mere political expediency. When he first ascended to the premiership in 1996, becoming Israel's youngest prime minister at the time, it seemed the prophecy had begun to unfold. The Bibi phenomenon had arrived, promising a new era of conservative leadership. However, power proved fleeting. His first term, marked by internal divisions and a complex peace process, collapsed after just 3 years. Netanyahu withdrew from the political spotlight, seemingly a spent force. The prophecy, it appeared, had faded into the annals of unfulfilled predictions. Yet, a decade later, he returned with renewed ambition, a more seasoned and formidable political operator. His second stint as prime minister, beginning in 2009, would become the longest in Israel's history, a record-breaking run of over 12 years. This extended period in power was characterized by a deepening alliance with ultra-Orthodox and far-right factions, a strategic partnership that provided stable coalition governments but also shifted Israel's political center of gravity further to the right. It saw the acceleration of West Bank settlements, a policy deeply contentious internationally and within Israel. And in the years leading up to October 7th, his government was embroiled in unprecedented mass protests over a controversial judicial reform plan, a move critics argued threatened Israel's democratic foundations. The nation was already deeply polarized, teetering on the brink of internal strife, even before the cataclysmic events of that fateful day. Then came October 7th, a surprise, multi-pronged attack by Hamas, unprecedented in its scale and brutality, shattered Israel's sense of security. Hundreds of civilians were massacred, thousands wounded, and over 200 taken hostage. It was Israel's worst security breach in decades, a profound intelligence and operational failure that left the nation reeling. And once again, Benjamin Netanyahu, the self-proclaimed Mr. Security, stood at the center of the crisis, his legacy now inextricably linked to this devastating failure. In the immediate aftermath, his rhetoric shifted dramatically, embracing a language of biblical retribution. There is a time for peace, and a time for war, he declared, echoing the ancient text, but imbuing it with a fierce, uncompromising resolve. This was not merely war, it was total war, a conflict framed in existential terms. His speeches invoked not just scripture, but vengeance, comparing Hamas to Amalek, the ancient tribe God commanded Israel to utterly destroy in the Old Testament. The invocation of Amalek is profoundly significant and deeply troubling to many. In Jewish tradition, Amalek represents absolute, unprovoked evil, a force that seeks to annihilate Israel. The biblical command to blot out the remembrance of Amalek, Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse 19, is one of the most extreme and difficult passages in the Torah, often interpreted metaphorically in modern times. By applying this ancient, genocidal command to a contemporary enemy, Netanyahu was not merely using a metaphor, he was signaling a war of annihilation, a conflict with no room for compromise or coexistence. This raises a critical contradiction. Netanyahu is a secular Jew. He does not live by the strictures of Torah law, nor does he publicly adhere to religious observance in his daily life. Yet, he cloaks his politics, particularly in moments of crisis, in its most potent and uncompromising language. Why does a secular leader invoke divine prophecy and ancient commands to justify modern warfare? The answer lies in the profound understanding that power, especially political power, understands and harnesses the power of belief. In a nation deeply rooted in its historical and religious narratives, such language resonates powerfully with segments of the population, particularly the religious and traditional right. It frames the conflict not merely as a geopolitical struggle but as a cosmic battle between good and evil, a divine imperative. And the Rebbe, though gone for 30 years, still casts a long, influential shadow. His legacy is not confined to the spiritual realm, it extends into the political. Chabad now operates in over 100 countries, a vast global network of synagogues, schools, community centers, and even rehabilitation facilities. It is a movement that actively seeks to reconnect secular Jews with their roots, and in doing so, often introduces them to the Rebbe's Messianic vision. As one analyst observed, it's a revival network, and also a political model. Even other movements like Feto drew inspiration from Chabad's worldwide strategy. Chabad's global reach and its emphasis on outreach and influence have made it a significant, albeit often understated, force in Jewish life and, by extension, in Israeli politics. The Rebbe's blessing, symbolized by the single dollar he famously handed to Netanyahu, became a tangible link, a constant reminder of the prophecy. "You will become prime minister," the Rebbe had said, "and you will pass the scepter to the Messiah." Netanyahu's political career has been a series of remarkable comebacks, each seemingly defying the odds. He became prime minister in 1996, again in 2009, and yet again in 2022. Each time rising from the ashes of political defeat, each time more embattled, more controversial. His third term, now, is arguably one of the most volatile and challenging in Israeli history. The war in Gaza, with its immense human cost and international condemnation, has placed Israel under unprecedented scrutiny. The strained ties with Washington, Israel's most crucial ally, highlight the diplomatic isolation the conflict has wrought. And the internal protests, which nearly toppled his government even before the war began, have only intensified, reflecting a deep societal rift and a profound crisis of confidence in his leadership. In this moment of fire and fury, Netanyahu is once again speaking in the language of destiny, of historical imperative, of divine mission. But for many, the question looms large: is this divine fulfillment, the culmination of a prophecy, or a dangerous illusion, a political maneuver to consolidate power and deflect accountability? As dusk settles over Jerusalem, and the faint wail of sirens pierces the evening air, the weight of history and prophecy hangs heavy. Once seen by some as the man who would usher in the Messiah, Benjamin Netanyahu now presides over a nation in profound crisis, grappling with an existential threat and a deeply divided populace. He is a man shaped by prophecy, by a narrative of chosenness and destiny, now confronting his own reckoning. The question for political analysts, religious scholars, Israeli citizens, and the global Jewish community alike is not merely about the outcome of the current conflict, but about the very nature of leadership in a nation steeped in ancient narratives. Is Benjamin Netanyahu fulfilling a divine mission, a preordained role in a grand historical drama? Or is he, in his desperate struggle for survival and legacy, writing his own scripture in blood, forever altering the moral and political landscape of Israel? The answers will shape not only his legacy but the future of a nation. Subscribe for more untold stories behind power, prophecy, and the past. Engage with us in the comments below. What are your thoughts on the intersection of faith and politics in times of crisis? Share your perspective and join the conversation.